This is the poet and the poem from the Library of Congress. I am Grace Cavalieri, and we are on remote with poet, novelist, short story writer, screenwriter, Professor Jim Ray Daniels. And we wanted to start with a special poem because it was just published in Rattles Magazine yesterday to worldwide distribution. So we'd like to hear it today. Here's Jim.
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, just a shout out to Tim Green at Rattle for publishing this poem. It's called French Omelet. And it's when I was on a sabbatical in France, and I'm from a family of auto workers in Detroit. That's probably all you need to know. French omelet. When my parents came to France to visit, they got on the wrong train. We lived in the middle of nowhere, too small for their map. We retrieved them at another station and drove to our small house surrounded by someone else's grapevines. My father, retired from Ford in Detroit, could not believe how narrow the roads were, unmarked paths, two-way traffic on one lane, requiring small gestures of deference. On leave, I had a small break from marking papers. My mother had raised 5 kids and nursed her tiny mother till she died. All she wanted was a French omelet. Out of season, the small restaurants nearby were closed. I myself did not know what made an omelet French. We grew up with scrambled eggs on special occasions and hard-boiled at Easter. My 2 small children liked sweet brioche toasted for breakfast in our dark, stony kitchen. My mother read them bedtime stories. My father built fires in the fireplace. We were all in some version of heaven, but my mother already relied on a cane and wore tinted glasses on the narrowing road to a wheelchair and blindness. She got her omelet in a roadside cafe one sunny February afternoon, warm enough to sit out on the tiny terrace. She refused to be disappointed with their small, modest lives, their ordinary children. She was in France, eating an omelet, so light she had to keep it from floating away with her fork. Just the 5 of us in that cafe. My father could relax now that she had her omelet. We squinted into the sun with all the time in the world as the clocks briefly paused to grant her that small wish. I keep saying small, even as it grows in memory, looming down from the distant sky years after her passing. I can see that full yellow plate in front of her. She ate it for the rest of her life.
Oh, Jim, hard-boiled eggs for Easter. You get us every time. My emails were flooded with that poem yesterday. Everyone I ever taught or knew, you do it to us every time. 30 collections of poetry, 7 of fiction, 3 produced screenplays, and now new essays coming out. So, do you remember the first publication of yours?
Beyond my high school literary magazine,
Yes,
it
grown up.
was it was in a little literary magazine called Green's Magazine, and I actually got paid $3 for it. So uh, it was my first money, for writing anything. And as you know, most literary magazines just pay in copies, so it was a big deal. I think my mother bought that check off me to keep somewhere.
I hope that didn't lead you down the wrong path of aspiration. That would not be
Yeah,
good.
I
Well,
couldn't wait to get a check for $4.
did you know you were born to write? I mean, where does this force come from? Jim, I would call you a creative machine, but a machine does not have your magnificent heart that we all respond to in your writing. Where do you get this energy?
Well, thanks for that, Grace. But yeah, it's an obsession,
Aha.
and an addiction, but a harmless one for the most part. But I've thought about it over the years, and a a large part of what shaped me as a person and as a writer was going to remedial speech class from kindergarten through eighth grade when I finally graduated. But I developed this habit of not talking much in public or in school among people I didn't trust. Among family and friends, I would, but other people would kind of, sometimes tease me for my speech defect because I slurred my words pretty badly. And for some reason, I just couldn't correct it. And so by the time I finally did, I had gotten in a habit of not speaking, but writing my thoughts down, uh, which a teacher in high school told me were poems. And I wasn't sure about that because I didn't like poetry very much at the time because it didn't seem to connect to me. But they really were the beginnings of poetry. And I kind of really depended on getting those thoughts and feelings down. And that continues to this day.
That is remarkable because I always wondered what the little boy Jim Daniels was like, but I never knew that. I just thought of you as a curious, incorrigible, energetic, athletic child who was very annoying, probably, with all of your
Oh,
energy.
yeah.
But that is so,
Incorrigible is a good word.
that's that is another heartbreaking, wonderful story, isn't it? Now, I haven't read that story in your collection, but I'm sure it's there.
Uh, I I actually, when I was in graduate school, I wrote a poem about it, and I don't know how, but someone was writing a textbook on how to teach, remedial speech, and she wanted to use the poem and used it as the epigraph for that book. Uh, the poem, a poem that I wrote about it.
So that's all. That's not going to be in your essays.
No, I haven't written prose about it, not
Hmm.
directly.
Well, I'm looking forward to those essays coming out pretty soon. But in the meantime, I'd like to honor the latest book that I've read of yours called The Luck of the Fall. And once again, you will read it and not get up until you finish that book. And so, would you tell us what's in it, please? That is so mesmerizing. And then we can hear a little bit. This is A Poet in
Uh,
the Poem. This is Jim Ray Daniels. I'm Grace Cavalieri, and I'm on the moon. Go ahead, Jim.
yeah, so The Luck of the Fall is my seventh collection of stories, and like in my poetry, I tend to get a little obsessed with where I'm from, the Detroit area, in a family and community of auto workers, and so a lot of these stories are set there, and the community is kind of a place. And the title, I will read a little excerpt from the title story. And I think a lot of the stories deal with sometimes we go on hard times, we go through hard times and we feel, really down about it. But often there's some kind of, I use the word luck for it, something that transforms us and changes us that ends up maybe being for the better. Um, so there's a kind of irony in that. Not all the times, but sometimes you come out of these bad experiences uh, a, a better person in some way. So I'm going to read a short excerpt from the title Story. The story is set during childhood, and there's this kid, it's a fall night, and he goes outside after dinner because all the parents, the fathers work in the auto plants, and they all eat dinner at the same time. And it's a fall evening, and he's in maybe seventh or eighth grade. And these two girls that he's grown up with, they end up kissing on the lawn. And this is the end of the story. We on Pearl Street rarely got to decide when to stop anything. Money and power give you more control over stopping. Free for alls only stopped when someone got hurt. That was a game we played where everyone kind of just jumped on each other. That might have been a good place to at least pause a little while. Two pretty girls kissing me without consequence. on a clear night in October as the sky went from dark blue to black. A few rare stars may have been visible, though if so, we weren't paying them any mind. The gray fuzz of our polluted skies mirroring our concrete streets provided some comfort and insulation against the deeper plunge of lost possibilities. Maybe we should have looked up a little more often. I don't want to be a cheerleader, Paula said. They were practicing cheers. Nobody said you did, Kathy said. How come they don't have guy cheerleaders? I asked, just to contribute, as we worked to fill the silence of not knowing what to do next after kissing. Some schools do, Kathy said, like colleges. So show us what you got, Paula said, and they both snorted. I laughed too. I had nothing to show. I feel the earth spinning, I said, through the ground, real slow. That's because we're such good kissers, Kathy said. I lay there, my skin suddenly prickly, wanting to say something clever, but my mouth was dry, and I felt something weird in my chest. So I just swallowed, then murmured, maybe you're right, as if I knew a thing about kissing. Kathy reached over the cool, damp grass we'd matted down with our wrestling. She grabbed my hand and squeezed, so I reached over and grabbed Paula's hand and squeezed. On her front lawn, behind a thin pine tree that had done so well that someone would cut it down and steal it for Christmas that year. A lesson in that for all of us that we'd learn over and over. Anything nice will disappear.
Mm. I'm glad there's enough truth in life to go around, or you would have it all. Jim, these are characters of, would you say, desperation sometimes?
Yeah, definitely some of them, sure.
Yeah. But I was thinking that the writing of this is the redemption, that just the making them permanent is an honoring of some things that were kind of disheartening and grimy actually in their lives.
Yeah, I am trying to honor these lives in a way because a lot of these people are challenged economically,
Hmm.
socially,
Hmm.
etc. And they, and there's a lot of struggle in the book. It's not a real upbeat group of stories, but I do feel like there is some redemption and consolation in here as well.
No, the truth is the redemption. The honesty is the redemption. The characters that will never die. I mean, that is it. So I I see it that way, and they're indelible. I loved everyone had dinner at 5 because their fathers all worked in the auto industry. Oh, now what do you like about screenplays? We feel what you like about prose because it's in the line. Um, Screenplays are so different. So what do you like about doing that? I mean, they won awards, so you must have liked them.
Well, one of the dirty little secrets of filmmaking for me was that I ended up really enjoying the collaboration.
Mm,
Uh, when we write, we're in a room by ourselves, and because I was really involved, my friend John Rice directed and or was involved in all. Actually, we did 4 films, um, but I was involved in all aspects of the film because we didn't have much money, so going around searching for props and extras and things, locations and things like that. But I know it can work out the other way. But I made a lot of good friends through making these films, the actors, the directors, the musicians, everything, and uh, because it's really a merger of different art forms,
yes,
and I
but they
learned.
can make, oh, they can make it better than it is or worse, though. I mean,
Oh
here you
yeah,
are. Hmm.
yeah, I was really open to suggestions, particularly because I was new. I never really studied screenwriting. The first film was called No Pets, and I worked with my friend Tony Buba, who's a famous documentary filmmaker.
Hmm.
And he read the story of mine, and he said, well, "You think you could turn this into a screenplay?" And because I'd like to make a film of it. And what I did is I just took out everything that wasn't dialogue and then built it up again. So it was kind of on the job training. But that's one
Hmm.
of the things I like about it. And it really helps with the revision process and writing as well, because when the words are performed in real time, you can really hear how it drags. And in the editing room, you just cut, a couple words here, a couple words there, but it all contributes. It's like revising a poem where you just take out a word here or there and think, oh, that's not going to make a difference, but
Hmm.
it adds up and I think does make a difference.
It is a fascinating skill. Getting money is a more fascinating angle to this. I mean, poetry, yes, but getting money for a production is another thing all taught together. So when I was at PBS, we tried to make films of Hemingway short stories, but there was
Hmm.
not enough dialogue. There's all wallpaper. So we never could do it. It was all prose. But and you had to go to the visuals. So your characters are very
Yeah.
active. Your characters are very luminous. So I can see that. Um, but now you won awards, but you know that what happened to Faulkner and Hemingway, in Hollywood. Be careful. They turn to drink. We don't want that to happen. Hollywood has ruined good prose writers, Jim. And because of your magnanimity of saying, if they change it, that's all part of the package. But some writers could not bear to have one thing changed, and that did them in.
Yeah, one of the luxuries of making small independent films, which is what ours were, is you're not concerned with making a commercial package. The lengths of a lot of these films are not commercial lengths. A couple of them are short films. So we really were interested in getting into, film festivals for our audience, and a couple of them showed up on public TV here and
That's
there, but
great. Yeah.
yeah. So we really just, I mean, so I'll tell you a quick story. When we premiered the film No Pets in a theater in downtown Pittsburgh that held like about 1,200 people, uh, because like I said, Tony Bubba is really known. And so we sold it out, right? And uh, we're there at the premiere, and I told Tony, I said, look, if this were a poetry reading and we were handing out $10 bills to everyone who came in instead of requiring $10 a ticket, we still wouldn't be able to fill the place. So the idea of a writer reaching a completely different, larger audience was enticing.
Very interesting. But I know you agree with me that there is no price on poetry, as there is no price
No,
on
no.
love. Aren't we glad it's not in the marketplace? Or it would be sold like Greenland, So we're happy to keep poetry in the rarer air, I call it. Well, we will have a poetry break now, and I'd love you to give us a good, strong taste by two poems. And if you'll tell us what books they came from, we can get those books.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually, at this point in my, I guess, writing career, I've become reinvigorated by the chapbooks. And so my last two collections have been these little chapbooks that uh, that were kind of fun to put together. I've always enjoyed the chapbooks as these short things that really can focus on one thing. So this is a chapbook that came out last year in 2024 called Comment Card. And let me read a poem um, called At 65. So I'm 68 now, so this is a couple of years ago, but it's probably still true. And it's set in winter and snow, and that's what we're having here in Pittsburgh right now. At 65, this morning I fell back into deep snow and dug myself into an angel. Yeah, I didn't tell anyone. I mean, come on, right? Who did I think I was kidding? I woke up then as if touched by not God or iced fever, but some lost tender spirit. What I want to say is that when I stood, I suddenly lost all grace and nearly fell onto my angel. My handprint to save myself lies where my heart is, was, should be. a badge of snow in the dusted grass. I noticed then the size of my wings, their broad, graceful arc. Who made those? I asked, as snow continued falling. I looked up into it, almost dazzled again at 65. And that poem was originally published in The Sun, which was very
Well,
exciting
you
for me.
republished some of these books for the chapbook because I remember that poem.
Uh,
It was never published
yeah,
before.
it was published in The Sun, the
Oh,
magazine.
oh, right. Because
Uh,
I have read that poem. The Sun came out in San
uh,
Francisco, right?
it's somewhere in the Carolinas, but
Oh, right. Okay.
it's a fascinating magazine that accepts no advertising, and really has a distinct kind of human aspect in its prose, and uh, it's in a lot of really nice photography too. It's a unique American
I
journal that
do
continues on.
I do know it. Let's hear another poem.
Okay, so then I'm going to read a poem from another chapbook that came out a couple years ago called The Human Engine at Dawn. And what I like about this chapbook is that it has a picture of my grandfather, who's over here, working at Packard Motor Car Company
Oh,
uh,
Packer.
in Detroit when he was a young man.
Mm.
And he just kind of, it doesn't say anywhere that it's my grandfather, but I thought my grandfather working on a big engine in the Packard plant was a uh, good kind of tribute to him. Uh, this poem is called Gospel, and it's basically for my son, who's now 31 years old. Gospel. I saw the great blue heron today, still above the flat horizon, staring as I passed on my bicycle. Some mornings, I admit, I scared in the rising just to see those wide, whispering wings spread over grapevines clenched in earth and bright green rose. Nothing is here for my amusement. The heron fishes in a small stream where the narrow road turns, easy pickings. Today, I don't scare it. My son dropped sticks off the narrow bridge into that stream 20 years ago. A man now, and I'm sad for it on days like this. Thousands of miles away, he sings songs I've never heard. Look, I'd say to him and point. He's not here for my amusement, getting on with it, screwing up, muddling through. We used to watch current carry those twigs till they disappeared. Sometimes it's so quiet I can hear wings. The heron's straight, graceful pin above flat lands along the stream. To dig our roots deeper or to fly? How to hide nests, protect our young. My son is tall somewhere out there. We
Mm.
build nests, one thin stick at a time. The sticks never disappear. I don't want to live far from water. My amusement is finite. Leaves on the vines redden and wither, while elsewhere fruit ferments into wine. It's an old story, I know, but teach me the words, my son.
Jim Daniels is also an editor or co-editor of at least 6 anthologies and has been the recipient of 2 fellowships from NEA, which is very competitive, 2 from the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. He's had 3 Michigan Notable Book Awards, the Brittingham Prize, the Blue Lynx Prize, the Tilly Olson Creative Writing Award, the Milton Kessler Award. I need more energy, Jim, for you. And 3 gold medals in the Independent Publisher Book Awards. How do you expand time to work full time? How many years were you at Carnegie Mellon?
40.
Yeah. And yet you were able to expand time as a disciple. So, what was your discipline to get to accomplish this canon of work, which will last longer than you will?
I hope so. I don't know. I mean, it was interesting because I used to be a night writer before I had kids, and
Mm.
then I have to get up in the morning with them, so I became a morning writer, particularly when they were in school, and the uh, the teaching worked out well for me in terms of I lived very close to the school, and I would walk there, and so I was able to spend a lot of time with my kids while they were growing up, which was important to me. And but so my office at home was on the third floor, and so I could hear the kids downstairs when I didn't say don't bother me when I'm writing, but I could hear them on the stairs coming up to ask me a question or see me about something, and then. And they really just enriched my life by having them around
Mm.
um,
Mm.
with the writing, so it kind of blended into each other then.
Mm. I believe that with all my heart. Um, you were a native of Detroit, and now you live in Pittsburgh. You were the Thomas Stockham Baker University Professor of English, which is a chair. Is it not a chair?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you were there for all those years. And now, what are you doing at Alma College in Michigan? Do you
uh,
commute to Michigan?
yeah, this has worked out really well. I'm teaching in a low residency MFA program at Alma College, which I recommend highly for anyone looking to go back to school. It's
Okay.
because it,
We're always looking for good graduate programs.
well, and this is for people who have a life that they can't really leave and go back to school full time. It's and which works out for me too. There's two 10-day residencies a year where everybody gets together and does workshops and readings and lectures and socializing and everything. And then in between, I mentor students through the internet. Every month, they'll send me a packet of their writing and I'll comment on it. So it keeps my hand in teaching, which
Hmm.
I really continue to enjoy, and it really feeds me. And I mean, over the holidays, I met with two or three former students who happen to be in town visiting family to catch up with them. So I like keeping track of my students in various ways like that.
I'm
And
with
I
you all
yet
the way.
I still I still go back to Detroit. My father's 96, and on Saturday, today's Thursday, I'll be going to spend a few days with him. And so, uh, and I have other family there, and my oldest friends in the world are there. So it's still an important place to me. And it's like a 4.5 hour drive, which is a significant drive, but I can actually go back and forth pretty easily as long as the weather holds.
Well, I can honestly say you're one of the writers who has made Detroit immortal in a good way. How did you ever interface with Philip Levine?
Oh, that's an interesting question. You know, I I kind of have to admit that I wasn't. I had worked in the car factory, the same factory my dad worked at. Actually, he helped me get in as a summer replacement because the regular guys would take a lot of vacation and they needed extra help in the summer, and that helped pay my way through Alma College, which I graduated from. Uh, so I was writing about working in the factory, and then uh, it wasn't until later, I think it was as an undergraduate or in grad school, that somebody said, there's this famous poet from Detroit named Philip Levine, and he was the same age as my dad. Phil passed away, obviously, but he was born in the same year, so I had an interesting connection with him, and he was very generous with me. We read together in Detroit, which is a real highlight for
Wow.
me. It was in a bar near Wayne State University, and
Mm.
Phil's brother came. Phil had a twin brother, and my sister came. So it was this really interesting family thing, and
Did he
it
did
was
he
an
like
honor.
did he like your work?
Uh, I think so, and I ended up sending some work to him that he commented on and gave me good feedback. And
Mhm.
my greatest moment with Phil Levine was at the Dodge Poetry Festival. So it was when it was outside, and so I was sitting at it. picnic table with my wife, Kristen, and Phil's there, and he comes up to me. He has this old little camera, and Phil says, hands a camera to my wife and says, "Here, I want you to take a picture of two Detroit poets." And and she took a picture of me and Phil and handed him his camera back, and then he sent me a copy of that picture. You know, the kind of generosity he had, and you know, he was really honest and a straight shooting guy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people from Detroit are like that, and I appreciated that about
Well,
Phil.
there's a
You know,
lot of similarities in tone with both of you. And I knew that you were connected in some way. So, speaking of connections, let us hear a final piece of writing from the immortal book, The Luck of the Fall. And everybody will know a lot about working in the auto industry.
okay. So this excerpt is from a story about this guy meets his old girlfriend, who now has a baby. Uh, you know, he runs into her in a drugstore parking lot after not seeing her for a couple of years, and she's with her baby, and they agree to go have coffee together. And this is set in this. Yeah, so they live together, but they never married. And then this is set in this restaurant where they go to kind of catch up. She breastfed Ava in the booth at Big Boys. I was being weird about it. We're working so hard not to look that I was getting a headache. I'd spent a lot of time with those breasts. Hell, I knew them before they started to grow. We used to run in the sprinkler in front of our house in our underpants. I was swilling coffee, as most former drinkers did down at the meetings. I really, really wanted to smoke or to take a pill, but those drugstore prescription bags were made from some special rattling material. He'd picked up a prescription when I met at the drugstore. What was the purpose of that? And then they stapled the bag shut too, like they were giving you the pills, but didn't really want you to take them. Becca was drinking a big glass of ice water. Nobody bothered us in our far corner booth. I was trying to remember how and why we broke up. Let's just take a nap here, she said, tilting her head back against uh, the back of the vinyl banquette. I'm just so tired all the time, Willie. Her plaintive voice cut me with its butter knife of unguarded love. The booth became infused with the stuffy comfort of her parents' house or mine. Yeah, let's get some Z's, I said, thinking it would make her laugh. She gave me her little grimace that said, "What am I going to do with you?" The grin had made me fall in love with her at least 3.5 times over the years, ignoring the grimace. But she didn't have anything to do with me anymore, and that made me a little sad, sitting there killing time for the rest of my life. Ava's cheeks glistened with milk, her damp, thin, curly hair pasted to the side of her tiny head. When Becca switched Ava over to the other side, I got a glimpse of the tattoo of the small heart near where her real heart was, beneath her left breast. Once I wrote my initials in that heart with a magic marker while she pretended to sleep.
Now, a final poem. Do you have an
Okay,
extra one for us?
sure. So this is a poem called Snapper, and it's for my high school English teacher who uh, was very encouraging to me when being a poet in my school was a very weird thing. But it's also about why we write. It kind of takes us full circle in terms of the idea of, you know, we don't write for the money or any kind of recognition. We write because we have to. Snapper. I'm addicted to the sound of trash emptying on my laptop. Who threw out the trash? Was it a rock? Did it hit anyone? On dull days, my 10th grade English teacher conducted races in which we pushed a paper wad across the floor with our noses. We enjoyed it more than reading Shakespeare, though we missed Mr. K spittling through the air, reciting lines with vigor. He created inappropriate nicknames for us. A short man, he started with himself. He enjoyed a pint or three down at the friendly Sons of St. Patrick Hall in the company of our fathers. He gave us short quizzes called snappers that used only half a sheet of paper. He was funny about paper. I became a writer despite my long nose and dusty knees. You should have seen me push a paper ball with that nose. Such authority. When I empty my trash, I think of Shorty, who knew when we needed to get on our hands and knees in the name of literature. Ah, the crackle of paper, the empty trash can, the starting again, back on the floor with no expectation of prize or reward.
The voice of Jim Daniels, and this is The Poet and the Poem from the Library of Congress. The program is produced by Forest Woods Media Production. Post-production by Mike Turpin, MET Studios. We wish to thank the Library of Congress for making the program possible. Funding is provided by the Rivada Foundation of the Logan family, Sci-Nippet Fund, and friends of the program, Natalie Canavore and Sandy Jackson Cohen. Our engineer is Mike Turpin, and I'm Grace Cavalieri.